Barack Obama just opened an $850 million monument to himself, and in his first sit-down interview about it, he explained very calmly what that building is really for. But he made one mistake. He let it slip on camera in 10 seconds, and let's see if you can catch it. Watch.
And so I do think that what's striking is right now we've got a president in the White House who seems to have embraced and embodied, in a way we haven't seen in a very long time, this other story.
That was Barack Obama telling MS Now that the sitting president of the United States embodies the darkest story in American history. Not that he disagrees with him, but that he embodies caste, privilege, exclusion, and domination. And that is the frame for this entire interview, that America has two stories, a better one and a dark one, and Obama gets to decide who belongs to which. Now, here's a detail about that new presidential center that almost nobody mentions. It is the first one of its kind with a no federal archive inside. Every modern president before him paired the museum with an archive run by government archivists so historians could check the shrine against the actual records. But Obama separated them. His foundation curates this story, and the archivists stay out of the building. So keep that in mind, because the most revealing 40 seconds of this interview have nothing to do with Trump, actually. They are the 40 seconds where Obama writes himself a pardon and uses a president who died 200 years ago as the pen. Welcome back, my body language buddies. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the body language guy, and before we begin, remember that I have a blog in which I give you all my secrets of human behavior, body language, and persuasion. Go check it out in the link in the description. Let's get down to it. So let's start with, he starts with the speech carved around the top of his own museum. Everything he's saying in this interview hangs on one single word, and he drops it at the very end of this clip. Listen for it.
I've often said that may not be my very best speech, but it is most representative of what I believe. It captures my politics as well as anything. And it's been pretty consistent.
Consistent. That is the word. That is the brand. And that is the one word his record, well, let's say, can't survive. Because in 2008, candidate Obama stood in front of a pastor and said marriage is between a man and a woman, and that God is in the mix. In 2012, he evolved right when the polls did. And you don't have to take my word for it. His own chief strategist, David Axelrod, wrote in his book that Obama supported gay marriage the whole time and hid it for political reasons. Yeah, right. His own guy put it in writing. So, the same movie on immigration. In 2011, he said, I can't just bypass Congress and change the laws myself. That is not how that democracy works. And 1 year later, DACA. He bypassed Congress. So, isn't that nice? His words in this interview stayed beautiful while his positions moved with the wind along all history, Obama's history. And here's the behavioral move that makes that possible. When a communicator gets cornered on a specific, uncomfortable fact, maybe a flip-flop, a contradiction, a record that doesn't match the brand, they don't defend the detail. They jump up a level. They move from the concrete question to values, principles, identity. Suddenly, you're not debating DACA or marriage anymore. You're debating the American story. You're debating which narrative is better. You're debating what he believes. So, it feels like an answer, it sounds like depth, but it's evasion with a halo on it. Obama drops the word consistent, then immediately goes up to the Selma speech, his politics, his belief system, the museum's moral architecture, if this can have any kind of moral architecture. But the word consistent cannot survive his record because it is just not possible. So train your ear for this. The moment someone climbs from what did you actually do to here's what I stand for, you are often being manipulated. Now, you remember the dark story from the opening clip. He's about to describe it in detail, and I want you to hear this next clip the way you would hear something, maybe a job interview. Ask yourself, whose resume is he reading? So pay attention, watch.
And that has always stood in opposition with a different idea of America that is based on caste and privilege and excluding people and dominating people.
Excluding people. Those words are interesting because Obama's administration deported almost 3 million human beings, more than any president before him. And the nickname Deporter-in-Chief didn't come from Republicans. It came from the leader of one of the largest Latino organizations in the country, one of his own allies. Also, dominating people. You would remember that his drone program ran roughly 10 times more strikes than Bush. He ordered the killing of an American citizen without a trial. And 2 weeks later, a separate strike killed that man's 16-year-old son, also an American citizen. So he's describing his own record and handing the bill to somebody else. So when someone makes a strong moral judgment about what other people do, ask what that judgment might be covering in them. So we judge hardest what we are least willing to inventory in ourselves. So listen again to what Obama assigns to the dark story. Excluding people, dominating people, caste, privilege. Those are not abstract history lectures. Those are chargeable descriptions sitting right on top of his own presidency. Deportations, drone strikes, Wall Street immunity, foreclosure abandonment. He's not describing a distant America. He's describing sins he can name when they belong to the other dark story and, just have some fog when they belong to him. That is just projection. And the tale is always the same. The moral language is accurate, but somehow the words never point at himself, never point at the speaker. And then he goes after the money story. Now that we're talking about foreclosures. Pay close attention to who he says deserves what, because this clip sets up the biggest contradiction of his entire post-presidency.
And poor people need to stop complaining because a handful of people are the ones who are creating the wealth, and they deserve to keep it. And we don't need to take care of the vulnerable, and we don't need to make public investments in our kids. That story's always been there.
A handful of people keeping the wealth. Let's talk about that handful. After the 2008 crash, his Justice Department prosecuted exactly 0 senior Wall Street executives. His own Attorney General told the Senate under oath that some banks were simply too big to prosecute. Yeah, you can look it up. I had to look it up. Meanwhile, around 9 million families lost their homes. And the program that was supposed to rescue those homeowners was described by the bailout's own Inspector General as designed to cushion the banks, not the families. And after leaving office, $400,000 for one speech. That is nice. Paid by a Wall Street firm. He also got a Netflix deal. A $12 million stayed on Martha's Vineyard. He's doing well. They're not going to lie. But the man warning you about the handful joined the handful. And he charges admission for that warning. But here's where the entire interview clicks into place. Well, out of nowhere, Obama brings up George Washington. And you should ask yourself, why is a man defending his own museum suddenly talking about a slaveholder who died in 1799? But watch closely.
right? And which is why it's possible for me to be a great admirer of George Washington and also acknowledge he was a slaveholder.
On its face, that's healthy. Admire the greatness, name the sin. That's how adults treat history. Okay, I can go with that. But he's not done. Listen to where he takes it next.
Which is true of all of us, right? It's true of every president. It's that we're this mixed bag. We got contradictions and embody the country's contradictions. And
every president is a mixed bag. But did you catch what just happened? Washington's flaw gets a name, slaveholder. Obama's flaws get nothing. Earlier in this same interview, he calls them unfinished business and people who disagreed with what I did. So Obama's drones are never mentioned. The deportations are never mentioned. The 9 million foreclosures are never mentioned. He built a moral machine right in front of the interviewer. You can love a great man despite his named sin. Then he ran himself through that machine with the sin left blank. No sin whatsoever. He's sinless. That is literally signing a pardon for himself in the most holier-than-thou smug tone possible. And we need to talk about omission. Omission is not passive. Omission is not an accident. It's an active choice to withhold the material part while keeping the surface technically true. So, yeah, Washington's flaw gets a proper noun. Slaveholder. Obama's flaws get euphemisms. So that's why this works on camera. He can always say he didn't lie. He named a sin, just not his sin. He acknowledged imperfection, just not the specific imperfection that would cost him the moral high ground. So, sophisticated omission is harder to catch than a flat lie because the sentence sounds complete. But it isn't. It is a verbal sleight of hand. So trained analysts listen for what was strategically left blank, especially at the exact moment the speaker appears most honest. And Obama did that without missing a beat. That level of hypocrisy is seriously impressive. And now the missing archive makes sense. The one group of people who could fill in that blank, the government archivists, are the only ones not invited into the building. And here's why this matters beyond politics. This technique shows up everywhere, and you can train your ear for it. Accuse accurately and omit yourself. Confess somebody else's named sin to buy yourself an unnamed pardon. You will hear this from CEOs after a scandal. You will hear it in family arguments. The tale is always the same. The moment somebody says, we all make mistakes, right at the point where they should have mentioned their mistakes, you know that they are not going to give you that satisfaction. But let me know what you think about this in the comments. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the Body Language Guy. Much love and bliss.